Okay, so welcome everyone, and let me introduce today's our special guest, Marley, and she makes beautiful illustrations, and she's also good at urban sketching, so she can do a lot of stuff, and she can even make like books, lovely books, and I don't know, I haven't thought about the introducing, but Marley, if anything that left over, please you can also introduce yourself. But welcome.
Okay, thank you very much. It's very nice to be here and to give you guys a little bit of an intro of the workshop I'll be doing at Dekel in the middle of July. So I'm doing a little bit of a condensed version. That one will be a 3-hour workshop. We're gonna kind of cover the initial basics of color theory for color mixing. And I really want to encourage people, if you have any questions or something that I'm saying is unclear, please drop questions in chat. And Sodom, would you mind just keeping an eye on the chat if someone drops a message there?
I will,
Um,
I will monitor the chat.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Because yeah, that's kind of the point of my workshop is that color theory is this thing that feels like it should be simple, and yet it keeps like being confusing because color theory as we know it is not a science. It is actually a collection of conceptual information that we've collected over centuries. And that's why we now actually have like 3 fields of study that look at color. We've got color theory, we've got color mixing, and then we have color science that actually gets into like the actual science behind why color works the way that it does. Um, so I think that's one of the things that very often frustrates and confuses learners, beginners, anyone who's picking up art as a hobby, is that color theory doesn't always behave the way we expect it to when you actually get to applying it in real life. Because the theory is observations. It's things that people have collected. So like the idea that red, yellow, blue are our primary colors was solidified as an idea around the time of Da Vinci, when mostly they only had earth pigments available. And those were kind of the furthest outliers on the color gamut that we had. But as time progressed, science allowed us to create incredible and beautiful, vibrant um, synthetic pigments, which also enlarged our understanding of color science. And that's kind of how we learned those 3 aren't actually our core color primaries. But that knowledge still sticks. It's been repeated so many times over the centuries that we still go, what's your primaries? And everyone will go red, yellow, blue. And that's fine. But it does cause some confusion when you start putting it into practice. So that's actually what I want to talk to you guys about today. I want to give you a different way of actually like looking at color and understanding it so that when you apply it for yourself, you get the result that you're aiming for, that you're hoping for. Because I know how frustrating it is when you mix a color, when someone said you mix blue and red, and they say you're supposed to get purple and instead you get gray. And you're like, why? I mixed red and blue. What's happening? Okay. So part of the reason why things got so messed up is, Sodam, can we spotlight my laptop screen just for a moment? I'm
Okay.
gonna like I wanted to print these out for you guys, but unfortunately my printer decided to give up on its pink ink today. So this is not gonna work as a demonstration. So I just want to show you guys quickly, and then I'm actually going to demonstrate it on paper for you guys. Um,
Are you spotlighting it now? I mean, are you sharing it now or?
oh no, I'm kind of waiting for the spotlight, but I can start screening sharing Shalom.
Oh,
Um,
like, I just don't know which one to spotlight. So I just want to.
oh, the one with my face.
Okay.
That's my laptop screen.
Okay. I made you into spotlight. Can everyone see Marley's screen? Yes.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yes, we
Yeah.
can.
You
We
guys see
can.
the color circles?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So one thing I'm gonna get into like a little bit of technical knowledge around color theory, but that's also just for interest and so that you guys understand. So you can see these 2 little color circles, the one with a white center and the one with a black center, right? I just
Yeah.
wanted Okay, perfect. Okay, so when we talk about color theory, you'll sometimes hear the terms subtractive and additive color theory. And all that is literally referring to is whether you're working with light or whether you're working with pigment. Because the light theory for light, as in digital screens, photographic lighting, stage lighting, behaves very differently from when you're mixing pigments. And the reason for that is that when you mix the light primaries, RGB, which we're not gonna. Sorry, is someone asking a question?
As it was. Are you lying down?
All good? Okay. So when you mix the light primaries, which is RGB, you get pure white light. And that is why we call it additive. Like you add all the color, like all the wavelengths of light together, and you get pure white light. When you start painting with pigments, every time you put a pigment down on the page, that pigment is absorbing wavelengths. So it is subtracting from what you're able to see. And that's why when you mix all the color primaries together, you get something that's very dark or even black. And that's why they call it subtractive, because it's literally like kind of subtracting the light wavelengths that you're seeing. So this is more just for curiosity and for interest, so that people can understand if you encounter those terms. So today we're going to be working with what we call subtractive color theory. Okay, from here, and this is why it gets tricky. So like I mentioned earlier, most of us have been taught.
What do you want me to do there?
Sorry. Oh, I think someone's audio is on.
Yeah, I'm just gonna mute you guys quickly. Just let me
Cool.
now. Mute.
Okay.
And mute.
Awesome. Thank you, Sodam.
If you want,
Okay.
sorry,
Hmm?
to speak, just drop in the chat so I can unmute you or something, or you can unmute yourself purely.
Perfect. Yeah, like people are welcome to jump in with questions. That's why I'm checking if I hear a sound, because I do want people to ask questions if something's unclear. Okay, so here is where it starts getting tricky. So by the way, these pages that I'm showing you guys, like I was hoping to print it out and like kind of show it to you guys on camera, but this is from the workbook that I put together for the workshop in July. And I will probably make it available after the workshop if anyone wants to download it. But here's kind of where it gets tricky. When we're in primary school, we're taught about red, yellow, blue. And as I said, these primaries are a great starting place. The other reason they use it is because when kids go to primary school, they'll usually know colors like yellow, red, blue, green, that already. They don't necessarily know the names of the colors, which we'll get to in a second, which are actually like primaries that give us the widest range. So what happens, you can see even here on like digital screen and when you print it out, these give us rather muted colors. And I don't know how many of you have encountered the problem, like I said, where you mix a red and a blue, and instead of getting a nice purple that you were expecting, you get something that's brown or gray. Or something like you mix a yellow and a blue and you get this like kind of muddy, muted green, which if you're painting a naturalistic scene is great. So also, off the bat, I want to say, muted colors or muddy colors, I might sometimes switch between the two terms, but it's not it's not a criticism of the color. It's not saying it's wrong. It's literally just, do you have control over it? If you want a muted color because you're painting a natural landscape, that's exactly the outcome you're hoping for. But if you were hoping for a bright outcome, like a very vibrant color, this is where it gets tricky. Okay, so what is the answer? The answer is that over time and with the help of color science and advances in science, like printing and pigment and color, we discovered that cyan, magenta, and yellow is actually the three colors that give us the widest mixing gamut. Now, there's a lot of interesting science in that. I can also share, there's a page called, I think Pete Does Color or something like that on Instagram. He goes absolutely deep into the science of color mix, like color theory and which primary combinations, which color combinations gives you the largest mixing range. But for today, we're gonna like look at these three, and I'm gonna give you like a way to help you think about color so you can mix the way that you like. So these three already, you can see like the way that they're kind of overlaying each other here. Because remember, originally, primaries were colors that we defined as colors you can't get by mixing any other two colors together. But if you look here, this yellow and where this magenta is very pink, it's not really a red, it's very, very pink. But here's what's interesting. If you overlay that pink and a yellow, you get what we usually think of as a primary red. So that means that red is mixable by mixing this pink and this red. So it isn't a primary. You can get it by mixing two other colors. And so on, we kind of figured out, okay, these colors give us the base range. Now, the thing is, what I want to teach you guys is like with these three colors, you can get very far. You can mix such a wide range of colors. But that's also something that comes with experience. So you start noticing the differences between the colors that you're using to mix with. And this can still be very hard when you're starting out. Okay, I'm going to skip over that because that's just about tertiary and secondary colors so that people know what they are.
Can I ask a question while you were on that screen?
Yes, go for it.
If you can go back to the cyan, magenta, and yellow. So, I mean, those are not colors that you get in a paint set, right? So looking at them, they look to me like cerulean blue, alizarin crimson maybe, and lemon yellow. Now, is that about right? Or
Yes, you are spot
if you're
on.
literally buying a paint set and looking for these. Okay, thanks.
100%. So it's like usually this blue is kind of similar to like a phthalo blue, your lemon yellow, and like you said, alizarin crimson, or like you get magenta in quite a few ranges. But yeah, a lot of beginner sets will maybe have 3 of these, maybe 4 of these. If you're lucky, it has all 5. Like there's quite a few beginner sets I've sometimes given to friends where I would literally pry out some of the pans and replace them with colors that get them closer to these colors so that I know they have like a bigger range if they're a beginner, because I don't want them to get frustrated. I want them to enjoy the process. Okay, so here we go. So this is what I kind of suggest to beginners. You're going to be working, and for anyone who has colors like this, so for today's, so I actually think we can switch back to my, wait, one thing before I switch back. Okay, so when we look at cyan, magenta, and yellow, what we're going to do is we're going to add 3 more colors to, you can see here on the right, we've got magenta, cyan, and yellow. And then in a twist of fate here, we are using the colors that we would traditionally think of as your red, yellow, blue. So quite a like orangey yellow, a very like purplish blue, and then your like almost fire truck red. Usually people would refer to this as a warm and cool primary set. I actually try not to refer to it like that when I'm teaching beginners, because I've realized this causes a lot of confusion. The reason for that is because the creative and the artistic community as a whole can't actually decide what makes for a cool blue and what makes for a warm blue. And the reason for this is because if you look at something like this, I'm just going to use my handy dandy pen tool for a moment. If you look at a color wheel like this, very often they would split a color wheel right down the middle, and they go, the colors on this side is warm and the colors on this side is cool. That seems simple enough. But now you have some people saying, this is a warm blue and this is a cool blue. And then you have some people saying, no, but this is the cool blue and this is the warm blue. And the thing is, when we paint it out on the page, hopefully you guys can see it as well. Like it's an intuitive choice. For some people, the one makes sense as warm, the other one makes sense as cool. But the reason why I don't like warm and cool because of this distinction is because if you can't agree on which one is which, it's going to cause confusion. And that's actually what I've seen a couple of times when people try and learn these rules. The reason I think this happened is because if you look at a color wheel like this and you split it down the middle, like I said, here's the warm colors, here's the cool colors. So some people argue this blue is in the middle of the cool color, so that makes it cool. And this blue is close to the warm color, so it makes it warm. But if you look at a color spectrum, now that turquoisey blue is sitting here, it's closer to the warm colors. Whereas the purplish blue is sitting all the way on this end of the like cold side of the color spectrum, and they say, no, this is the cold blue. So that's what I'm saying. There's merit to both arguments. You can argue it in either direction, but that means they've never really gotten consensus. So some people will say the one is cold, the other one is warm. And I just think we can make it a bit easier for ourselves and like cut out that confusion. So what I've done, and I know it makes it a little bit verbose, but I feel that this helps people a little bit, like make it a bit easier for them to reason out what they're going to be doing and what result they're going to get. So what I've done is you can see here's the 6-color primary, and I'm going to show you in a moment. I've got a prime art set, which colors in the prime art set matches to these colors. So I named each of these for the primary color that it is first, and then which other primary it leans towards. So an orangey red or a red like a fire truck red starts getting closer to yellow than to pink. So that's your red yellow. Okay. I know in the beginning this is a bit much to like get used to, but you'll see once we start working with how we're going to mix the colors, it's going to help. Okay, and on this side, we've got our magenta, which is taking like our pink red, so red, blue, because a pink red will be leaning towards blue on the color wheel, and so on. So we have our blue, red, blue, yellow, yellow, red, yellow, blue. And I'm actually going to paint these out so that you guys can also see. Okay, so Sodom, I think we can switch back to my desktop so that everyone can see what I'm doing. Okay, I see actually both of them are showing at the same time. Great, nice. Okay, so as I mentioned, for today's demonstration, I'm using this iris set. I recently started using this. I'm very impressed with it. I've tried a bunch of different artist palettes, paints. I think most of the watercolor ranges available in South Africa I've gotten my hands on, also some of the Japanese brands and other ones. So if anyone ever has a question about a watercolor brand, if I have it, you're welcome to ask my opinion of it, and I can give you comparisons with other ranges that you might have tried. So for today, the colors that we're going to use to to mimic the 6 primaries is lemon yellow, new gamboge, which is your nice warm yellow. I'm going to choose quinacridone rose because it's closer to magenta. However, the set does have, where did I put it? Like someone was talking about alizarin crimson earlier, like crimson like red is also quite a pink red. But you guys are welcome. Oh, I see there's a question from Sodom.
Oh, it's not a question. Sorry, Marley. I just wanna, should I read the comments on the chat sections? I see.
Hey, yeah, jump in, please.
I don't think this is a question. I think she's just adding on your statements.
Okay.
That in a lot of the paint brand, you will see the color called primary red, which is actually magenta, primary blue, which is cyan, and primary yellow, which is almost like a lemon yellow. I'm just
Perfect.
yeah.
No, you'll see some brands have started actually listing colors as like primary red, primary yellow, primary blue. But many of them are still kind of using like the standard names, and then kind of relies on like you'll see this naming more often in gouache, because gouache is traditionally considered a designer medium, and because print is very often your design format or medium at the end of the day. You'll see it in some of the watercolor ranges. I almost want to say some of the more modern ones, because the more established ones like Daniel Smith and so on seldom use terms like primary red or primary yellow. But correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm remembering this incorrectly. Okay, and then just to continue here, we've got vermilion, which is going to be our red yellow. So the red that's leaning towards yellow. We've got our ultramarine blue, which is going to be our one that's closer to purple, to red. And we've got our phthalo blue, which is leaning towards yellow. You know, that nice like ocean blue, the one that's always a little bit turquoise. Okay, so some of them I've got a little bit left in the pan. I'm just going to top up the ones that I don't. There we go. Yeah. Because this palette was a complete mess before today's workshop. So I had to very quickly rinse it out. So those names, the red, yellow, red, blue, yellow, red, all of that, you guys might have noticed on that page, behind each of them, I gave them a little code. So it would be like RY is red, yellow, YR is yellow, red, BR is blue, red. The reason I did that was also to try and make it a little bit easier to explain how to read them out, whether a color is going to be bright or muted. Okay. Where is my pen? There we go. Okay. So, as most of you know, when you mix all three colors of the primaries, we tend to get a dark brown, a dark gray, something that closely resembles black, but rarely ever gets there. That's why you might have heard the term CMYK when people refer to like the cyan, magenta, yellow primary, because the K is actually for process black. That's specifically in the printing world. Because you can get a very vibrant black mixing all three, but you seldom get a truly deep black. And also it just saves them a lot of ink if they just have a single color for black instead of having to mix all three inks every time. So that's just like a little bit of trivia on the printing side. But when we get to our pigments, it's important to remember that when you have all three primaries in play, your colors start getting muted. They start becoming slightly gray or slightly brown. Now we've got a couple of components. We have our little codes for our colors, and we have this knowledge that three primaries together start creating muted colors. So now we can do a little bit, I joke and call it a little bit of color math. Don't worry, it's not actually equation or anything. It's just a way to think about it. So let's say I want to mix a green, and we go, okay, I want to mix. I'm wondering if I've got a permanent marker. This might help. That moment we're just trying to find a single marker. There we go. So this is our yellow red. This is our yellow that goes towards red. This is our yellow blue. Okay. Blue towards yellow. Red towards yellow. And red towards blue. Now, we want to mix a green. So for green, we need yellow and blue. That's simple enough. Okay. I want to mix that one and this one. So I'm going to mix YB plus BY. When you add them together, we end up with a color mixture that only contains two of the primaries. There's only yellow and blue in this mix. Okay. So let's actually mix it and see what we get. So here is our yellow blue. And here is our blue yellow. Need a bit more. I'm going to muddy this up so much. So I would say that gives us, and I'm going to do a couple of variations with a little bit more of the yellow in it so we can see it nice and clearly. That gives us a very nice vibrant green. I hope the light is okay. I can try and adjust it a little bit, but I'm not sure how much we'll get out of it. But you can see this is kind of like a very lovely spring green. Okay, now we want to mix, let's say all I had was this blue, so our BR and our YR. Okay, it's still a yellow and a blue. Sure, that makes sense. But here's where it gets interesting. Let's say BR plus YR. Now we have all three primaries in play. Okay. What are we going to get? Let's see. So I hope this is clear on camera. I know it's going to be subtle, but I'll show a more pronounced example as well. So first off, what I'm noticing is this is more of a natural green. It's a bit more muted. Some people might refer to this what they call an olive green. I just want to check, and someone give me a heads up if it's clear, because I don't I don't want to tell you guys like
It is quite clear that it's muted, that's for sure. It's just a bit glossy, but I think that's fine. As
okay.
soon as it dries, it will be fine.
Okay, cool. I can
Yeah.
also let's see if I position. Yeah, okay, the lights. There we go. Is that helping a little bit?
Yes, it does.
Perfect. Okay, so let's do one that's a bit more dramatic because I love this one. I think this is usually where a lot of people kind of like really start seeing it, is when you try and mix purple. You've already heard me use that as an example, and it's because it's my pet peeve, because as a kid, I loved purple, and then I would try and mix it, and I would get a mess, a brown bloody mess, and the teachers, and you go, but this isn't purple, and the teacher goes, yes, it is. And you're like, I'm not sure if it's me or and unfortunately, as kids, very often we go, well, the adult says it's so, so I guess I'm wrong. And that's where a lot of people start getting discouraged when it comes to art, and it makes me so upset. I can't tell you guys. I like you can ask my friends. I regularly go off on a rant about this because unfortunately, the teachers have also been taught to teach it this way, and they don't necessarily understand why it's happening. So they can't explain it to the kids. So they just keep parroting the same rule. And then the kid goes there, like, I guess I'm just dumb at this. I guess I'm not good at this. And then they get discouraged. And that's just an absolute tragedy for me. Okay, so let's do our vibrant purple first. So we're going to do BR and RB. We only have reds and blues in play here. Okay? Only red and blue. Nice. Then this is going to be our muted one. It's going to be RY plus BY. And we see there's quite a bit of yellow in here. We've got all three of them. Okay, let's mix them. So, do you mind telling me how much time we have so that I don't go over time?
I mean, hot pause at the moment. Sorry, someone trying to join, so I'm just gonna help that person quickly.
Yeah, go for it. Thank you very much.
Just monitor the.
Okay. So we've got ultramarine blue here, and I'm going to mix it with that very nice pinky, almost magenta color. And you can already see this is such a lovely, juicy purple. Like, I'm still a purple fan. I don't think that's ever going to go away. We can even like adjust it a little bit more. Let's go for like a cooler purple. I think it's one of the reasons I love purple is that it can so easily be a warm or a cool color. Okay, now let's mix the other one. This is going to be fun. So, as much as this frustrated me as a child, as an adult, I do actually quite love this mix because it's great for shadows. It's great for if you need to mix a quick gray or a brown. So you can see this is a very orangey red. And now we're going to mix in our cyan-ish phthalo blue. And what do we get? We get a very, very moody color that has very little purple in it. There we go. That's almost black from two colors because of the amount of yellow that each of those pigments like chromatically have in them. It's not that they physically contain yellow. Like if you look on the tubes, I don't know if you guys can see here, if it will focus. Okay, so you can see there it says PB29. So it means that's PB literally stands for pigment blue. 29 is the number. Okay, and if you look at the rest of these tubes, that's another reason why I'm actually so impressed with this Primark range. Usually you don't see pigment information on ranges like this, and like it's 120 Rand. I used to tell people like don't go for sets like this if they're a complete beginner. I know they're affordable, but usually they just end up frustrating people. But this set I've been so impressed with. So there you can see each of these are single colors, right? I don't know if there's any colors in the range that are two colors. Let's see. Yes, we do have. So for instance, this sap green, there, PG7 and PY1. So this is sometimes a color like this can be combined out of two pigments. And that's also what confuses people because sometimes they look at a color, it seems fine. It's like what I'm kind of trying to teach you guys by looking at the pigment and you can see, okay, this one's more red, this one's more yellow. Sometimes there's a sneaky pigment in there that introduces your third primary that you weren't expecting. So if visually it looked fine to you, but it's still mixed muted and you don't understand, Sometimes the answer lies in which pigments are actually in the paint. You might find a little bit of a sleeper agent in there. Okay. So
Just to add that purple that you mix that now is so muted. It looks a lot like that moon glow of Daniel Smith. It's a beautiful color, actually. Very nice shadow color, as you said.
exactly, they've got Moonglow, and what was the other one that's quite well known? I remember the folks that were at the Daniel
Shadow violet.
the Shadow
Shadow
Violet. That
Shadow
was a
violet is just as beautiful, yeah.
But that happened because of a mistake. They were mixing Moonglow and they accidentally swapped out, I think, like the pinkish color that's in there with accidentally like this kind of
Uh,
orangey reddish color. And they were like,
mm,
wait, this was a mistake, but it's kind of amazing. We're going to keep doing
it
this.
is. Yeah, I've got both those colors. It's beautiful.
Okay, so I'm just doing a second swatch where I'm mixing in a little bit more of the red. So you can see like this literally went from a gray to now it's actually like a solid brown. Like that's, if you were expecting purple, you almost couldn't be further away from it. And I think this sometimes causes a lot of confusion and frustration for people. So the last one is if you do the yellows, you get your oranges. Let's just do those for the sake of continuity. Or actually, sorry, let me not waste time on that because I'm doing a condensed version here. Here's our color wheels. And for anyone who wants to, I can actually create like little PDFs of these that you can print out at home. You're going to be painting on printer paper, which obviously is not ideal for watercolors, but it can still act as an exercise page if you want to do this at home. And also it's got the listings. You can see there I've written them out each one by one. So this is your color wheel for bright colors. This is your color wheel for muted colors. So how this works is if you want to do the color wheel for bright colors, you're going to position your colors in sequence of where they lean. So your yellow, red, let me start like this. Yellow, red, okay, is gonna come to red, yellow first. Then we've got our red, blue. Then we've got our, here we go, blue, red over here. So they're all kind of following in sequence. You can see how it's going over from the one color to the other, okay? Blue, yellow, yellow, blue. Cool. So they're all gonna like follow each other along, and that's how you get that very beautiful like rainbow spectrum wheel. Now for the muted colors, we're gonna swap them around. So here you can see yellow blue is right next to red blue and red yellow. So there is a lot of all three primaries in. And here we're gonna swap them around as well. Okay, and that's gonna give you your muted wheel. Cool. I wanted to check, does anyone have any questions so far? I'm going to see if I can quickly fill these in for us.
Oh, I have a question.
Yes.
Is there any particular reason why you leave the space in between when you're putting the tube? There's always space. There's another space in between. I don't know if I'm explaining it right.
Do you mean on the color wheel or do you mean on the
Color wheel, when you just put your watercolor tube, two of them next to each other, and then there's a gap in between, and then there's another tube. Yeah.
two spots? So that's for mixing the colors, the secondaries that you'll get in the middle.
Ah, okay. Okay. And
No problem.
25 minutes, just letting you know.
Okay, let's do this. Right. So hopefully the colors are not too. So advantage is I can fill in each of these quite quickly. Red, yellow, red, yellow. There we go. Making sure that's perfectly in the middle. Red, blue. Okay. So I will say in the process of putting this course together, it's been very interesting to learn about all the different things about color theory and the terminology and things like this whole debate. I almost want to say feud between what is a cool blue, what is a warm blue. Because the thing that I also learned, I used to think that color theory is color science. And then people were like, no, no, no. Color theory, like I said, is the study of the relationship, like how colors interact with each other, the relationships between colors, but also how they affect us emotionally. And that I found super interesting. So I'm going to use the colors that I pre-mixed to fill in the bits in between. So this was our muted green.
Sorry, Marley. I have a question on the chat. Can I read it?
Go for it. Yes, please.
Oh, it's from John Marie. Hi, Marley. I have a question. I have lemon yellow and the yellow ochre in my set. May I
Yes.
use yellow ochre as my warm yellow?
Yes, you can. So yellow ochre is usually more like an earth tone, but it will give you a very beautiful, like muted green if you want to do natural greens. You're going to maybe struggle if you want to mix like vibrant oranges, which you'll see in a moment when we get here to the top, but it will still give you it's going to give you more like naturalistic tones.
And one more question. Similarly, I have Prussian blue and ultramarine blue. What is Prussian? Warm or cold? Warm or cool?
So Prussian blue, I would say, so Prussian blue is a hard one. When you look at it, it looks almost like ultramarine, right? But when you start diluting it and you see the mid-tone, you'll see it leans a little bit towards cyan. It goes a little bit turquoise. Okay. Was it Prussian blue? Prussian blue is a fascinating color. It actually is, I think, one of our youngest like blue synthetic colors. It was completely developed by a chemical process. And it's incredibly light fast. For like many, many years, artists struggled to get super light fast blues. That's why ultramarine blue, or originally ultramarine blue, was created. At that point, it was just called lapis lazuli. Like literally, the lapis lazuli stone was ground down. It was incredibly expensive to mine. It was incredibly hard to come by. And that's why they very often you'll see it was used in religious paintings during Renaissance. So things like the Mother Mary's robes and things like that. It was reserved for only the most special of paintings. And for years, they struggled to produce blue pigments that were cheaper. And along came Prussian blue that was an accident in a lab. And also, I don't know if anyone's ever noticed, you tend to not get Prussian blue in acrylic ranges. You might get colors named Prussian blue, but it won't be the Prussian blue pigment because Prussian blue pigment can be can be bound in oil and you retain the color, but the acidity of the acrylic binder actually changes the color. They can't make an acrylic paint with Prussian blue pigment. That was very, very interesting to me. Okay, so as I said with the oranges, because the yellows are generally a bit more on the neutral side. You won't see as dramatic a shift between them, between the muted and the bright one, but you'll still see a little bit of it's not quite as bright as you'd expect. There we go. That's a nice orange. A little bit more yellow. So we do a lighter tone as well. So you can see I left like 2 gaps in the middle just so that you can kind of mix one that's closer to the, yeah, somehow I always get paint all over myself when I'm doing this. So you can mix one that's closer to the one color and one that's closer to the other color, just to give you a bit more of a sense of the range. And then we're going to get to our lovely purple over here. Let's do that one, and we do one that's a bit more pink. Oh, I can do the other one more blue, actually. There's a bit more drama. I like high contrast. There we go. Okay, and then down here we've got our very moody mix with our phthalo blue and our, let's put this one on this side, and our vermilion, our red yellow, and our blue yellow. Also, feel free to ask me questions if you've ever encountered paints doing weird things. Like I love that question about Prussian blue. I love the question about yellow ochre. One of my favorite ways to quickly mix beautiful natural greens is yellow ochre and any pre-mixed green that I already have. Okay, and then we just have to do the final oranges. So we've got this and red blue. But now you'd think I'd know this out of my head, but the amount of times where I've mixed up my swatches. So like I said, this is still going to give you quite a beautiful orange, but you can see it's a little bit more blue muted because of that presence of a little bit of blue in there. I'm also going to try and mix one. Ah, see, there we go. I just mixed the wrong red in there. So that completely negates what I'm trying to show you. Okay, pink. There we go. And then our warm yellow. I wanted to show you that this can create actually quite a fire engine red. There we go. So that already tells us like that red is not, if you want that to be even a brighter red, then we would do this pink. And we would do the yellow red. So the one that's leaning towards red. So we're taking out that little bit of blue that might have been coming from the lemon yellow. But lemon yellow is, in my mind, such a pure yellow. It's like it very seldom leans clearly towards blue or orange. But just for swatch case, there you can see. That's pretty much what we have as primary red. Okay. So
That is amazing.
yes. So something I also want to show you guys. So the reason why we also try and color theory will get you so far, but at the end of the day, you have to play with your mediums. You have to see what they're going to do. And I know sometimes people have asked, why are there so many yellows in a watercolor range? Why are there so many greens? Whatever, it depends on the range. Some of them have more reds, some specialize in greens, whatever the case might be. Because at the end of the day, the pigments themselves actually respond differently. Like it might look like the same color on paper, but they're going to behave because they're a physical chemical. And what I mean with that is one of my favorite examples to show people is one of my favorite yellows is nickel azo yellow. Now, if you dilute it down, it actually looks quite close to, sorry, my brush is dirty. I think my paint is also dirty, but nickel azo yellow, if you dilute it down, is very similar to like a lemon yellow. It's a bit more orangey when you're using it thicker or less diluted. You can see that's quite a light yellow. But here's the thing. I want to show you guys one of my favorite magic tricks. Let's use, trying to think what's a good color to demonstrate this with. I think I'm just going to use plain neutral gray. I think that will give us the best canvas to show you what's going to happen here. So I'm just going to do a nice wet wash of neutral gray. Think of you painting a night scene and you want to put stars in the night sky. Now, very often what people might do in that case is either you mask out the stars so you don't paint over them. You might paint them in afterwards with gouache, so something that's a little bit more opaque. Because trying to paint a light color on top of a dark color is not really something you can do in watercolor. I see it's very, very glossy, so I'm worried this is actually gonna, let's see. Is that better, guys?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is better. And see.
Okay. I'm gonna try and just use the plain lemon yellow for a moment. So I'm gonna put some dots in here. You can see what the lemon yellow does. Like it's kind of pushing the color to the side. I'm gonna lift this up so you can see. Right?
Perfect.
That's perfect.
Right? Now,
Wonderful. Yeah.
okay, so that's already a bit of a fun effect. Here's what happens when you use nickel azo yellow. Okay, that's a bit of a very wet drop. But it literally pushes the other pigment out of the way. It's literally taking over the lemon yellow. It's such a, I almost want to say like an aggressive pigment. You put this into a wet wash and it's just going to take over. But what I love about it is if you
Sure.
make a very beautiful like wet wash with granulating paint, it almost creates these little circle halos around the dots that you make. And I absolutely love
Amazing.
that effect. Like I've used it in paintings. So here's an example where I used it to create these little fireflies,
Sure. Lovely.
right? So the thing is, your pigments and your paints that you're working with isn't just their color, it's also their physical properties. I don't know if you guys have touched on granulation much. I was once in a workshop with a professional artist where a lady was asking, hey, my one paint looks like it's grainy. I'm not sure if it's old. She's like, yeah, I think it's a bit old. And I had to jump in and go, no, 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 that's a feature, not a bug. It's intended. Like watercolor has this beautiful property to it. Some of the paints granulate. The most famous one that most people might have touched on because it's very much in all beginner sets is your good old ultramarine blue,
Mm.
especially if you do it in a wet wash. And something to note, you won't see this effect on something like hot press or very smooth paper. Like you're going to struggle to see it. But the moment that you're working on cold press or rough paper, granulation effects just in the beginning, I absolutely hated it because I was an artist who liked acrylics and markers. I loved precision and control. I was a control freak. Watercolor taught me to loosen up. I want to show you guys.
Question.
Yeah,
What was the last yellow color called?
the last yellow. Oh, nickel azo yellow.
Nickel, Asia, yellow. Okay. And you got 13 minutes. Just letting you know.
How much?
13, is it 13 minutes, right? I'm not good at math.
Oh no, perfect. So I want to show you guys. So these little paintings, if it wasn't for granulation, they would be kind of boring. Like they're okay, they're pretty. I acknowledge that. But what makes them really interesting is this granular texture. And that is just like look at this like blue granulation in this brown color. Right? Or here, I think this was like sodalite genuine, which is this
Oh,
beautiful granulating gray. You just drop it into any other color and it just gives this like texture to it. I love it. So
is that
yellow.
also a Daniel Smith color, that last one?
So these are a mixture of colors because here's the thing, like Schminke has this great range that they created called the super granulating colors. They're beautiful. They're lovely. They're also expensive as heck, and trying to find them in South Africa is a pain in the ass. So what I did instead, because I'm autistic like that, quite literally, is to literally go and look at the pigment information in each of the super granulating sets, find those specific pigments in other ranges available to me in South Africa, and I ended up creating a palette consisting of just single granulating pigments, which I can now combine in any combination I want. And if anyone wants that like table that I drafted with all the granulating pigments in them and which colors they correspond to in Daniel Smith and I think Schminke, I am happy to share that.
Wow, that is amazing. And that takes a lot of work to actually create that list. Sure.
That was a fun afternoon for me. Like I genuinely enjoy doing that.
Yeah.
Here we can see like the reason I didn't pause on the swatch too much because that's the thing with granulating paint. You have to give it a moment to settle. And now you can start seeing the ultramarine blue starting to
So beautiful.
settling out.
Sure.
And then I think what I'm going to do is I want to show you guys. So that's 6-color primary. Convenience colors are lovely. If you can afford them, they're great. And convenience colors just means pre-mix. So it's any color that you can essentially mix from your primaries or a beautiful pigment that you specifically enjoy. If there's a color that you find yourself mixing over and over, it's usually worth getting a convenience color that is just that color for you so that you don't have to mix it every time. But this was a little exercise I did, which is this one was painted only using the 6 primaries. This one was painted using convenience colors. That's so far, and I very specifically chose something with hard colors to mix. Like this kind of maroony, purplish red is a very tricky color to mix. I would usually use something like pearly maroon or something like that, which was one of my favorite colors, and that's why I challenged myself. Can I mix that without needing pearly maroon in my palette? I wanted to see how small a palette I can make.
Marley, there's a question in the chat.
Yes.
What colors makes that nice gray?
Which color? This one.
I'm not sure which one Eleanor was talking about. She said, sorry, miss for a second. What colors to make the gray?
Oh, Eleanor, you're
You can
welcome to
actually
bounce me
explain
off.
that one too. That's fine.
But yeah, this gray that or you mean this neutral gray, because the neutral gray is a single pigment from Daniel Smith. You get it in quite a few of the artist ranges. Neutral gray is usually this color that they throw in. So like general rule, I don't want to say it's a rule. I don't really believe in rules in art. If you can do something, do it. If it breaks something, then you know maybe it's not a good idea. But that's about it. There's not really rules. Black in watercolor, like lamp black, ivory black, any of those things, they tend to dull your colors the moment that you mix them in. They make them, I would say, muddy in an unappealing way. But that's not to say I haven't seen artists that use them very effectively. I just think. So very often when you do then want to darken colors, often you'll mix it with the complementary, or you get things like neutral gray, which is this like pre-mixed gray that you can find. You can also use something like Payne's gray. It tends to be a bluish gray. And from here, it allows you to darken other colors without losing too much of its vibrancy.
Marley, I got a question. Like, because sometimes when I want to invest in a watercolor pigment, like certain color, I mean, because if I remember it correctly, each watercolor brand has, even though it's the same name color, they somehow always don't end it up with the exact same color. So is there any way for me to learn, I mean, figure out whether this color is exactly what I want? I don't know if I'm asking the right question. Like,
Are you essentially asking how do I know if like phthalo blue in Daniel Smith is the same as phthalo blue in Schminke?
yeah, like,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So that's the thing. Like this artist, the names that they use for artist paints and like across the ranges, some of them are consistent, but sometimes they'll be mixed up. So the way that you know for sure, or like the closest that you can know for sure, is by looking at the pigment information. So something that I did for myself as well, because I was buying tubes of paint, and again, I joke with my autism, but at the same time, it leads me to do things like this, which is I made a watercolor file of each of my pigments so that I don't buy doubles. I will literally go with this thing to Decal Age and compare it to what I see on the shelf. So I'm sure I'm not buying double of a color. But you will notice on each of the cards, I am writing down the pigment information as well.
Oh, okay.
And
That's
the pigment information is usually what gives you the base clue if it's going to be the same thing. But here's the thing, depending on the range, they are prepping those colors differently. So to give you an idea, this is PV19, this is PV19. There's some pigments that depending on whether they've been heated, whether they've been milled to a specific consistency, whether they've been put through a specific chemical process, they can actually end up with very different colors. But there's also that amazing resource. I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with Jane Blundell's website. She has essentially swatched every color from the main ranges that are available, and she tried to scan them in as color correct as possible. It's an incredible resource, and I will say trying to browse her sites, trying to find the range you're looking for is absolute hell because it's a blogspot blog. So I usually just go Jane Blundell, Schminke watercolor. First link will usually be the Schminke like entry with all the swatches.
Just to come back to that gray that you've mixed yourself, that one was because of the three primaries being present. The one that you mixed there at the top with the RY plus BY.
That was vermilion and phthalo blue.
Yes, yes, that one. So that mixed a very grayed down mauvey color, which also tends to be more towards the gray. And I think I always thought about gray being having more blue present. If it goes more towards the brown, it's got more yellow and red present. So both are very neutral, in fact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there we
The
go.
one is a warm neutral, the other one is a cool neutral. So yeah, I've always thought of gray being having more blue present and brown having more of the warmer colors present.
You can see there is
That's a
quite
beautiful color. Yeah.
especially if you, and the thing is, you'll get a very similar result mixing this red with ultramarine as well, because the thing that's making it so moody at the moment is that red, right? So one of the classic You can see this is actually coming out a little bit more purple. It's giving you a lovely shadow color. Like this would be so great for shadows. So that's the ultramarine blue. It's just introducing a little bit more red into the mix, and it gives you a bit more of a purple gray.
Yeah.
But one of the classic like two color combos that you see people use quite often is ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. That's a very common gray, to the point where like Jane Blundell very much popularized that as like her favorite gray mix, because then you get that beautiful granulation, you get the moodiness. So here we've got some ultramarine blue. And I think this is my burnt sienna.
Just coming back to Saddam's question about the color being the same in different ranges, burnt sienna is one of the colors that are very different and similar in different ranges. I found that you have to try some of them out, and you'll then settle on one that you prefer. Yeah, because they're not all the same. And raw umber is the same. Some has got more of a red, a green undertone, and others are more neutral. So yeah, interesting.
So burnt sienna, my favorite is still Cotman's one, which was PR 101. But I think PR 101, they either can't find it anymore or they can't produce it for some reason. So most ranges are switching to what they call PBR 7. I don't like PBR 7. It's not because I tended to use burnt sienna for skin tones a lot. But I've also heard from friends of mine who are professional illustrators and artists that they found this burnt sienna from Cotman starts fading over time if they put it on a wall that gets sunlight. So it's not especially light fast. So I use it knowing that might happen very consciously. But you can see this is much more of like a orangey burnt sienna, and this one always feels a little bit more, I don't know, like softer to me in a way. It's not quite as vibrant, and it has a bit of to it. So that's
It's
the
dull. Yeah, it's a little
it's
bit more dull.
yeah. So I ended up playing around with like quinacridone sienna, and I think I also played around with burnt orange from Daniel Smith or something. I'm not sure where my burnt orange swatch is.
Quinacridone orange is also quinacridone. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm a bit late with time checking. We got 2 minutes left, but there's also
Okay.
comments about. I mean, some people really love your sketchbooks. You know how you bind
Oh
them,
yeah.
and then
Oh,
to say that it was very informative sessions. Just letting you know.
one last thing I wanted to show you guys if I can find it. So my sketchbooks are mixes of swatches and things that I try. And no, where is it? Okay.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah.
I'm just going to go for this for a moment. So this is my little book that I keep track of like primary combinations that I like. It's not complete, but this is like a 6-color primary. This is nickel azo yellow, carmine, and indigo, so quite a moody blue. So it gives you a
Oh,
slightly
beautiful.
This is
And then
nickel
you've got
azo.
example next to it of what you've painted with that palette.
Yeah. So this is like a bit more of
Amazing.
uncommon ones, like slightly neon-ish colors, and gives you like quite a light. And then from here you can see I still need to do my homework, but
Sure, that is amazing. Have you bound that little book as well?
yeah. So this was kind of like the offcuts from the bigger books that I made. So these little ones I've made a couple of. This was my first one that I made because I would buy the big sheets of watercolor paper and I was like, okay, so how do I get it into a book format? So this one, I think the one I use most often these days is possibly this one. There's an A5 one. So this is a mixture of gouache. This is watercolor ground on, what do you call it? Gold leaf. So you get this effect
Beautiful.
of gouache.
Mareli, I must say it's one of the best. It's really the best introduction to color mixing that I've ever seen. Really, it's so clear. It was. I think people are going to watch it over and over again. So thank you so much for sharing this with us. It's been very helpful and very generous of you to share this with us. See, we are really grateful for that. Very
Oh, it's
much.
a big pleasure. It's been a lot of fun. I'm not in a rush. If you guys want to close off immediately, you're welcome to. I'm not in a rush if anyone still has some questions.
I think what we can do is we can stop the recording and then we can have more questions. What do you think, Saddam?
I'm fine with that. Should I stop recording?
I think so. So yeah, thank you, Mareli, and then we'll continue with some questions if there are questions, and people can open their mics, and then we can ask questions if that's okay with you, Mareli.
Oh, go for it, please. I
Thank you
love
very
this is a
much.
special interest. I love talking about this. So
Yeah.
Want to look for Marley's workshop link. Just give me a second.
Yes, we're going to